listen-only mode.
Okay, good evening, commission members and staff. We're going to call to order the January 21st, 2021 meeting of the Harbor Commission. And Ms. Rodriguez, would you do the roll call, please?
Yes, of course. Commissioner Kramer?
Present.
Commissioner McRae?
Here.
Commissioner Nelson?
Here.
Commissioner Sloan?
Here.
Commissioner Stanowik?
Here.
Commissioner Stedman?
Here.
And Chair Sly.
Here.
Perfect, everybody's here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilshire, do we have any changes to the agenda tonight?
Chair Sly, Commissioners, no changes to the agenda tonight.
Okay, thank you. And do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on matters that are not on the agenda?
At this moment, we have nobody with their hand raised, so there is no public comment.
Okay. And I believe we have nothing on the consent calendar. Is that correct, Mr. Wilshire?
Yeah, that's correct. Just the approval of the minutes from the November meeting.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll make a motion. Approve.
Do we have a second?
I second that.
Okay, and let's just take a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Or abstentions?
I'm abstaining.
Okay, the minutes are approved as submitted. We have an important appointment announcement to make. I think Mr. Wilshire would like to speak to this.
Yeah, so for the appointment of Adam Stanowik, nothing official needs to happen here, but I just wanted to give Commissioner Stanowik a warm welcome. So as you all know, Commissioner Spicer resigned from the commission as of December 31st. So Commissioner Stanowik, as of now, he's been officially appointed and officially sworn in, and so this will be his first meeting. Adam and I met over the break and we chatted for an hour or so. I did my best to bring him up to the speed with the basics of being a commissioner, and we covered Brown Act stuff and meeting schedules. I gave him kind of everything I could to arm him for it, but I think he'll be a great addition to the team. Commissioner Stanowik's a slip holder and a live aboard, so I think that's a really good perspective to the group. And Commissioner Stanowik, if you have anything to say or want to do a little brief introduction, that would be great.
Sure, that'd be great. Yeah, well, thanks a lot. Yeah, Director Wilshire, appreciate it. Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm very excited to be here as part of this commission. And basically, I believe that the harbor and waterfront are very well run as it is, and I do spend a great deal of my time here. I have a great respect for the time and effort that everyone here has put in since they have been serving. And basically, from the last meeting, I was able to view, echoing the words of my predecessor, Commissioner Spicer. Some of his parting words were that he always appreciated the thoughtful discussions and banter of this commission that leads to the great diversity of the harbor. So I feel this is a good message and one of the reasons that I'm here as well. So thank you all, and I'm looking forward to getting started.
Welcome.
All right. Welcome aboard, Adam.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome, Adam.
Thank you all.
It's been an interesting week for swearing in, so we're glad to have you with us, and I think you'll find it interesting and enjoyable. It's a great group and a great staff to work with. So let's into the department updates, and Mr. Wilshire, if you could do the director's report, and then probably efficient just to keep rolling through to the business services, facilities management, and operations after that.
Yeah, will do. Back to me. Well, yeah, Happy New Year, everyone. I kind of forgot to say that as we get into 2021 here. So good to see you all again virtually. We do have a fairly busy agenda. My portion's pretty short, so I'll just get right into it. Next slide, Angela. So, all right, so my usual waterfront COVID update. I'm sure by this point, everyone's fairly aware of how this is all going and aware of how to track information. Unfortunately, since our last meeting, things have not gotten better with respect to COVID. They've gotten somewhat worse. So within Santa Barbara County, case counts are up dramatically. So we're really seeing our highest case levels yet. And for me, from my point of view, the most concerning part is that our local hospitals and ICUs are being pretty heavily impacted. And so that's a pretty real metric when that kind of thing starts happening. With regards to the waterfront, there have been a number of impacts. So the governor issued a stay-at-home order back on December 6th. And this really directly impacts a number of our waterfront tenants and businesses. So in summary, restaurants had to revert back to takeout only, which they're continuing to do today. Museums remain closed. So the Maritime Museum and the Sea Center are closed. Retail and charters are limited to 20% capacity. And from our operations, our waterfront offices are still closed to the public, but we're continuing to and have gotten pretty good at handling all of our day-to-day business through phone, email, and some appointments. Next slide, Angela. This might be a little small, but I just wanted to put it up there for some perspective. And all of this data is off the Santa Barbara County Health website, which is really informative. I encourage you to go there for any information if you need. They do a great job of updating and providing details. So this slide really shows the daily case counts on the upper graph. And this clearly illustrates the dramatic increase from December through today. So it's kind of an order of magnitude more apparent now than it has been throughout all of this. And the lower graph shows the ICU capacity, with Santa Barbara being the blue line and Southern California and LA being the red line. So you can kind of see that we were doing okay in November, and then as December came, Southern California and LA County got really bad. We kind of followed suit. So as of today, we're really operating at 0% capacity in our ICUs, and even here locally, and especially down in LA. Next slide. So vaccines, on a slightly brighter note, there seems to be a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. The county's in the process of rolling out vaccines and has a fairly detailed plan to do so. I'm not going to go into too much detail, as this is all available on the county health website. But some of the takeaways and the good news from the waterfront point of view is that Harbor Patrol was included in one of the early rollouts of vaccinations, being that they're EMTs and first responders. So as of today, 100% of our Harbor Patrol officers are vaccinated, which is great. I know police and fire are also going through vaccines, and so it's nice to see that we're getting somewhere with this. And I know it could take some time still. I mean, this will probably, the vaccine program will roll at least into spring and summer, and so we're not through it yet, but it's nice to have something to look towards. That's it on COVID. So unless anybody had any direct COVID related questions, I'll move on to my next bit. Seeing none. Next slide, Angela. All right, so on a much brighter note, I'd like to announce a few new faces, some new staff at the Waterfront Department. So first on our list is Brian Adair. So he's replaced Carl Treiberg as our facilities manager. This position's been vacant since July, and Brian came on board in mid-December after a pretty thorough recruitment. So Brian brings a real wealth of knowledge and a background in industrial engineering. He's got a lot of facilities management experience, mainly with education, higher education. One of his recent stints, he was the facilities manager at UC Berkeley and some other universities. He's really hit the ground running. I think he's overwhelmed but happy at the waterfront. He seems to be really enjoying it. And so, Brian, if you want to pop on and say hello and say a couple words, now would be a good time. Oh, are you on mute, Brian?
Hi, my name is Brian Adair. I'm very excited to be here and nice to meet you all, you commissioners. As Mike said, I've got over 30 years experience in facilities management, the past 18 years in higher education as a director of facilities, and I'll be relocating to Santa Barbara from San Francisco Bay Area. And I'm really looking forward to serving the community and the Harbor Commission. It's really great to be here. So there's a lot of excitement, a lot of energy. Our facilities, waterfront facilities department is wonderful to work with. And so I'm looking forward to being productive and helpful and making those changes that we need.
Perfect. Thank you, Brian. Again, welcome. And I can attest that Brian will serve the department well. He's hit the ground running.
Excellent.
So next on our list is Monica Brumand, and she was recently selected as the new Harbor Patrol Supervisor. So this position was previously held by Eric Engbretson, and we've held it open for almost a year now, while Eric was wearing both hats as the Harbor Ops Manager and the Supervisor. So Monica served the department as a Harbor Patrol Officer for 28 years. And really brings a huge amount of practical experience and a really solid understanding of waterfront ops. So I congratulate Monica, and I see you're on screen already, so this would be a great time to introduce yourself and say a couple words to the commission.
Hi, everyone, Commissioner Sly and commissioners and Director Wiltshire. I'm Monica Brumand. I've been with the Harbor Patrol for a couple decades now, and I'm actually looking forward to sticking around a little while longer. It's a lot of fun, and I thank you for all that you do. And it's nice to, I think I've met some of you before. I know Betsy. It's nice to see the rest of you, and everybody stay healthy in this crazy time.
Hey, quick question for Monica.
Yeah.
Monica, do you know Tom Parker?
Who? Tom Parker?
Tom Parker. Yeah.
I know Tom Parker. Yes. He's
Okay. Yeah, he's a good friend.
Yeah, he is with my stepmother-in-law. That makes sense. Yes. He's involved in a lot of chairs and commissions. He likes to be involved.
Cool. Thanks, Monica. John, I don't know if you're breaking up.
Yeah, I heard just the name and then that was it.
Okay, yeah. Well, no, thank you, Monica. And yeah, it's nice for the department to come.
Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, you were frozen. There you go.
Back, John? Yeah, I think he's breaking up a little.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah,
Well,
thank you, Monica. It's a great addition, and we're pretty happy to start filling out that Harbor Patrol group. They've been running fairly lean for quite some time, so this is a pretty big step for the group, and it's a good thing. And then last but not least, Susie Dunselman. So she was recently hired as our parking office specialist back in October. So she's been with the department for quite a while as an hourly employee supporting parking operations, but she'll be taking on a lot more now in her permanent role. And so this has been a pretty critical position for continuity of parking operations. And she really brings a great attitude, and she's just really a pleasure to work with. So she's not available to speak tonight, but I just wanted to congratulate her. And so that's it for the new hires. Next slide, Angela. I just wanted to touch base on vacancies a little bit. So although there are some new faces, we're still holding a number of positions vacant. COVID certainly had some major impacts on our budget, and so in response, we've been pretty conservative with managing costs. In addition to a number of all of our other cost-saving measures over the last 6 or 8 months, we've held 6 positions vacant. And so to put it into perspective, that amounts to about 12% of our workforce, which is significant. Operations have still been really busy through all of this, if not even more busy than usual. And so this level of staffing vacancy definitely has its impacts on operations. So staff's been working really, really hard to continue to serve the waterfront community. And I've been working closely with all the divisions to make sure we're regularly evaluating staff needs and really balancing the budgetary savings with the operational needs. So going forward, we're going to continue to hold some positions vacant when it makes sense, but we'll also fill positions when there's truly a need. And so on this slide, I just listed some of the positions that we have been holding vacant. And so unless there's any questions on staffing from the commission. Yep, Commissioner Nelson.
I'm curious, you mentioned that it was 12% of the workforce. What does that represent in terms of your operating budget? What kind of cut are you making to your operations by not filling those? What's the financial fiscal impact?
Yeah, that's a good question, Commissioner Nelson. Well, we have 48 full-time employees. I don't have the exact salary numbers in front of me, but each full-time position comes with the salary, but then along with that is a whole slew of benefits, which to the tune of about 40 to 50% in addition to a given salary. So with any given position, give or take, if you want to assume kind of 100 to 150,000 per position, if we're holding those open, the savings can be pretty significant. But like I said, historically, the waterfront departments operated really lean, and coming in new to a department, that's kind of one of the first things that I look at. And this group is a really high functioning group. They've done a lot with a little for a long, long time with very little ads. And so I don't take holding these positions open lightly, because it really does burden the remaining staff, but it's unique times. It's tough times for budgeting. And so we're making some real decisions.
I mean, I guess my issue is, is this the principal way that you're dealing with the impact, the economic impact of the pandemic is not filling these positions? Or is it equal to, deferring certain purchases or capital projects?
Yeah, good question as well. No, there's a whole number of levers that can get pulled in the expenditure department. And so we've gone through kind of line by line. And this is probably a little bit of a preview of what's to come, but we owe you guys our mid-year budget update as well as our FY22 budget in some coming meetings. But to keep it short, no, we're looking at all sorts of expenditures. So capital projects is a huge lever. I mean, we typically spend in the range of $2 million a year in capital projects. You can defer those and kind of kick the can on those. If you do that for too long, as you well know, it comes back to bite you. But those are areas where we can go after big dollar savings depending on where our revenues come in.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on staffing?
And I believe we get a mid-year budget update next month, do we not?
Yeah, I believe so as well. Mr. Bossy, that is well in his wheelhouse. And so he has a little better handle on the timing. But yeah, I think that's when we owe you our mid-year. Hearing no other questions. Angela, next slide. All right. So I usually give a tentative agenda items update, but I'm going to hold off on that because we have on item number 9, we're going to kind of do a little more comprehensive dive into our whole year ahead. So with that, I'll pass it off to Mr. Bossy for his business update.
Good evening, commissioners. Good to see you all. Real quick before I jump in, Chair Sly, yes, we'll be with you next month giving you our mid-year budget update. The numbers are still coming out. We're starting to prepare a skeleton of our mid-year report for City Council as well. So that all goes together, and we'll be back with you next month to talk about that. And spoiler alert, it's not pretty, but we're getting by and we're going to make do. So we'll be okay. Real quick, I just have a brief business services report. I wanted to update everybody on the city's temporary eviction moratorium ordinance. Next slide, please. So back on the 24th of March, shortly after this pandemic really gripped us locally and nationally, the City Council enacted an ordinance which basically stopped evictions for both commercial and residential tenancies for a certain period of time, as well as provided a rent deferral program where tenants, in our case, it was all commercial, obviously, tenants were allowed to defer their rent on a month-by-month basis. And it started out, again, nobody knew how long this was going to last. The first ordinance was you were allowed to defer your rent for April and May. And then in mid-May, as the pandemic continued to creep along, the city again enacted another ordinance which extended that rent deferral program into June, July, August, and September. So now we've crossed over into 2 fiscal years. Later towards the end of September, Governor Newsom extended the statewide executive order, which had to do with commercial evictions as well as their rent deferral program, extending that through March 31st of 2021. Next slide, please. So after much consideration, the City Council got together at their meeting of the November 17th, and they adopted an uncodified emergency ordinance that terminated the city's version of the rent deferral program as of 12/31/2020. So what that meant was, as of January 1st, rents were due. So, and that's where we currently are now. Rents are due, and as of the 31st of December, we had a total of 14 of Waterfront 61 tenants enrolled in the rent deferral program. Now that has gone up and down over the months. Initially, people weren't sure how long this was going to last, so we had, I believe, 21 at the start. But over time, some businesses actually really took off. Some were more confident and were able to pay on various months through the process. So in the end, we ended up with 14 at the end of December. And to date, we have approximately $1.4 million in deferred rent from our tenants. And that's about $400,000 for that April, May, and June of 2020. So that's the last fiscal year. And then the first 6 months of this fiscal year totals about $950,000. So we are currently working with our city attorney's office, as well as our economic development manager, to look at options for City Council as this pandemic continues to move forward. And as Mr. Wiltshire said, it's not getting any better. It's getting worse. We're not sure when things are going to open up again. So we're trying to see what kind of relief, not rent relief, but what kind of options we can give our tenants to make this a little bit easier on them. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Do you want me to, Mr. Commissioner Nelson, am I supposed to call on you guys? Commissioner Nelson, you have one? I'll take it.
No, I think I saw Betsy had her hand up.
Okay.
Well, I thought you did too, Michael. In any event, Brian, thank you for the report. Do you expect to have a budget subcommittee meeting prior to the next Harbor Commission meeting?
Yes, actually, my plan for those of you on the budget subcommittee is to put together a budget subcommittee meeting the week of February 8th. So I'll be getting in touch shortly to set that up. And we'll go over mid-year numbers ahead of the Harbor Commission meeting. We'll also kind of give you a big picture overview of our FY22 and FY23 budgets. And we'll be back. So the plan for now, and you'll see this in item 9, is that next month we'll be doing the mid-year budget update. And then in March, we'll be bringing the 2-year budget to you for your consideration.
Okay. And I have another question in terms of the rent deferral. How are these 14 tenants doing business-wise? I mean, what's their situation?
You know, it's interesting. Most are not doing well. But as I said, we've had a number of folks who have done amazingly well. And this is a mix of both restaurants and commercial activity. For the most part, restaurants are suffering, definitely. And they are our biggest our biggest tenants. They provide us with the most revenue as far as tenancies are concerned. So that is a concern. Some of our restaurants are doing better than they did last year, and they did great last year. So it's a mixed bag, but definitely our larger restaurant tenants are suffering.
Thank you.
It's not easy on anybody. Don't get me wrong.
All right. Thank you very much.
You bet.
It's a big problem for everyone.
Definitely. Yeah, Mayor. Commissioner McCray, sorry.
Got me now. I see that there's a value here. It's slightly different in the business services report PDF. It's probably a couple weeks older. But it's $1.4 million. Does that represent the base rent value? So that means that typically the harbor would be seeing much more than the owed 1.4 million?
That is correct. Commissioner McCray, that is just the base rent. Normally, yeah, with a lot of our restaurant tenants, you'd see a percentage rent that takes that number up even higher. Yes. Is that it? Oh,
Hey, Brian,
yes, sir.
so do we have a payment schedule for some of this stuff?
So the payment as per we've been, again, working with the city attorney in the actual ordinance that was enacted, that we call it the TEMO ordinance, temporary eviction moratorium ordinance. You're given 12 months from the date in which you had the rent deferral. So we take that as if you deferred April of 2020's rent, that would then be due 12 months later at the latest, 12 months later in April of 2021. So there is possibly a situation where a lot of these tenants will wait till that first month, and then essentially they would be double paying for the most part. So they'd have 2 years stacked on each other. The idea being that if you took it all the way through to December 31st and you took a December deferment for 2020, the last date that would be due would be with your December rent payment in 2021.
And so how much of this 1.4, if you were to break it down, what was, I mean, I'm just thinking, and the question really is, so if we think that people are going to be able to pay twice as much rent in April of this year based on business levels and what we see right now, that probably isn't very realistic. And so obviously we're going to have to work with some of these people because, they just don't have the money because there's no revenue coming in. And so, and that's why you have an idea of what buckets they are in by quarter? If you were just roughly to guess at that 1.4 million, you said, you talked about the last fiscal year and this fiscal year. So we have some idea, but how does it look on collecting that, I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, two things, as far as on a quarterly basis, we have it broken down by month. So we're following this obviously with a keen eye. The first 3 months or the fourth quarter of last fiscal year ended up being just shy of $400,000. And then the first 6 months, so the first 2 quarters of this fiscal year ends up being just shy of $1 million. But again, we have it broken down month by month. As for the payment process, it does present some issues, definitely. Know that a lot of these folks who jumped on the rent deferral program at the start have done fairly well throughout the process. The first couple of months were, don't get me wrong, very brutal, especially for our restaurants. But then when summer came and they were allowed to open up 25% and they got the hang of it, they were able to do some good business. Not as good as they did last year, but some of our tenants were at 97, 98% of what they did the prior year through, June, July, August, and September. But again, it is, in a sense, a doubling of your rent, depending on which months you took. So right now, that is the way it stands with the current ordinance. If City Council decides to amend that ordinance, we're again going to be involved with our economic development manager here at the city, as well as the city attorney's office in formulating how to make that happen And that could come in a number of forms, but we're really at the initial stages of that and trying to figure that out, of what we can do within the parameters that we're given to help keep our tenants here.
So under the TIMO ordinance, it sounds like you don't have guidance yet on what latitude we might have to work with tenants and further deferrals or spreading out things. In other words, that April rent that you mentioned that's due next April, if it can't be paid, do we have any discretion to work out some other arrangement, or does the ordinance expect that rent to be paid on that date, the end?
The TIMO ordinance has that, as I said, it's very confined. It's easy to look back now and go, oh, maybe coulda, shoulda, woulda, but nobody knew how long this was going to last. So right now, the TIMO ordinance gives you the 12-month period to pay it back, and that's based on the months from which you took the rent deferral. So we're pretty confined there. But again, we're looking at maybe possible options to move forward to see it. There could be changes, but it's a little too early to say at this point. But as of right now, that rent is due a year from when you deferred it.
Yeah, and Chair Sly, Commissioner Sloan, I just wanted to add one little thing. A lot of this stuff is happening kind of real time. So council made their decision to terminate the rent deferral program prior to this current shutdown. So as Brian mentioned, a lot of restaurants and businesses were finding a way to do some level of business. I mean, be it 70 or 80% of their business. It was still not the same situation that was occurring in March where they were closed. Council made that decision prior to the shutdown, and so that is what's in play right now. But again, as Brian mentioned, we're very much working with council and the city attorney to revisit that. And so it hasn't happened yet, but a lot of this is really happening real time. And so it's hard to say where we're going to be in 6 months, but we're going to kind of keep revisiting this and make decisions on how this stuff's going to be paid back and what kind of negotiations we can work out with our tenants. But we need a little more time to get there. We didn't mean to scare you all away.
Was it something I said?
I think, wow, that was quite a lot.
Is the city council aware of just how dependent the waterfront department is in its enterprise program with business leases and commercial activity? Do they understand that, you know, while it's a great thing to be able to, you know, provide deferrals, do they have a good grasp of the impact of those on the waterfront budget?
Commissioner Nelson, I'm pretty confident they have a fairly good understanding of our budget breakdown, and I'm even more confident that they're feeling the pressure from both sides of the coin, both tenants and landlords, not only within the waterfront, but citywide. And so they are weighing the waterfront as a piece of the larger city pie, but when they're making these ordinances, they're also taking into account citywide landlords and tenants. And so I think they have a pretty good overall picture. I'm not saying that their decisions are always going to align perfectly with the waterfront's needs, but they do understand the situation.
That's great, but it's just your operation is a lot different than parks. And the impact of deferrals has, you know, it's a greater impact than a situation in parks, which have a good load of general funds.
Very true.
Yeah, and Commissioner Nelson, be aware too that the airport has a huge number of tenants. They have over 120, 130 tenants. So they also are an enterprise fund, so they're in the same situation. So as Mr. Wiltshire said, council is keenly aware of the impact that this is having on our various budgets.
Okay, shall we move to the facilities report?
Hi, this is Brian. Thank you. The next slide, please. I'd like to talk to you about two subjects. One is our dredging, the federal channel, sorry. The Army Corps of Engineers really leads this project, and they contract out to the contractor, which was Pacific Dredge, and they have a 3-year contract. The fall dredge cycle started on December 30th and ended on January 7th. The total count, they relocated 127,142 cubic yards to the East Beach. The next dredge cycle will be in April. Next slide, please. This is a pre-dredge survey, and you can see in the zones zone 3D, 3C, 3B, 3A, etc. That goes around the sand spit, and that's where most of the sand gets deposited. And so that's where they focused on. Next slide, please. And this kind of you can see how the light purple area is shrinking. That's to the efforts of the dredging, and then it opens up the main channel. I'd like to present to you a video by Chris Bell. Please play video. This is the East Beach discharge. And then we had a king tide shortly after they completed dredging, so it leveled out the East Beach very nicely. And I was told that the discolored sand from the dredging discharge, that bleaches out pretty quickly in a couple of days. The next slide, please. Any questions on dredging? I would like to, as awareness, I'd like to let you know that the Public Works Department is promoting a bike share program, and the target areas will be the downtown promenade, and then the waterfront. They would like to have 250 bikes in the program with 50 docking stations and kiosks throughout, so that people can become members and participate in the bike share program. These electrical bikes are pedal assist, and they do go up to 17 miles per hour. The B-Cycle company was contracted to install, maintain, and manage the program. Next slide. It's gone through a lengthy vetting process, starting with the city council, and then they had to go out for a bidding process to find out which company would manage the program. And B-Cycle Corporation was selected in December 2019. In the summer of 2020, it went through a design review with the Architectural Review Board, and they passed it. But the Historical Landmark Commission, there was 3 separate meetings that they denied the program, mostly because they didn't think that the docking stations fit their historical character that they were wishing for. On October 20th, the City Council meeting approved a temporary 3-year pilot program, and the council found that the public interest for the program supersedes the need for the Historical Landmark Commission's review. As far as CEQA goes, the California Environmental Quality Control Act, where it's exempt, the program is exempt, doesn't have cumulative impacts, and is okay under that program for alternative use of bicycle facilities. So CEQA, we didn't have to do anything. Fortunately, then after that, it went to coastal development. I'm sorry, the city council hearing reviewed the coastal development permit, and then someone appealed that permit. So right now, the appeal is going to go back to the city council meeting on January 26th. And if the city council meeting passes it, then the person that appealed it has an opportunity to appeal a second time to the California Coastal Commission. So because of this appeal process, Public Works has kind of put a hold on the program, and whatever the outcome of this appeal process, then they will go back and revisit the plan and try to modify it to comply with any changes. The program supports sustainability, transportation. It falls under the coastal land use plan and also promotes coastal access. The next slide. A coastal development permit to expand the program to the coastal zone for 3 years. The program increases coastal access, minimizes parking impact, and encourages sustainable transportation. Planning Commission imposed a conditions of approval for locations, number of kiosks, and aesthetics. The outcome of the city council appeal will be help determine equipment locations and quantities. Next slide. This slide shows the coastal zone, and next slide. And the red dots represent where they're going to have Viking docking stations and also some kiosks in the waterfront area, also along State Street. Next slide, please. This is some images of the bicycle, the docking station, and also a kiosk. Next slide. Do you have any questions at this time?
Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Kramer.
Yes, I have questions and comments. I mean, what are you asking of us in the Harbor Commission on this? That's just my first question.
This is an awareness presentation. Not asking anything. It's just awareness that
Okay.
the Public Works Department is working very hard on a public bicycle program.
Okay. Yeah, I've read about the program in terms of State Street and so forth. It seems to me to be, well, whatever. It doesn't matter what it seems to me as. But I think having these stations in the harbor should not happen, actually. I don't think it's appropriate to have private enterprise stations located within the harbor or the waterfront parking lots. That's my observation on this. And I can't see how it will reduce parking because people will drive to rent these bikes and will park someplace or other. But it says that on a staff report here we've got, it says where possible to locate the docking stations on the mountainside of Cabrillo Boulevard, and do not install any kiosks on the ocean side of Cabrillo Boulevard, but any of those within the waterfront area, of course, will be on the ocean side of Cabrillo Boulevard. So it seems there's kind of a conflict there. I'd be interested to hear what other people have to say about it.
I would agree. And this is the first I've seen of this in the report in this presentation. And 250 bikes along the waterfront and 500 docking stations. I mean, that's a lot of bikes between the bathhouse and the harbor, where it looks like all those charging stations are. I mean, and obviously they're going to go up into the funk zone and that area, but that's just a lot of bikes. And so what's the thinking behind so many bikes down in that area?
I just want to clarify that the whole program has 500 docking stations and proposed 250 bikes. Not all those bikes and docking stations are going to be on the waterfront. So I don't know what the final distribution is, but I'm thinking it'll be like 100 docking stations and maybe 75 bikes. But as you know, when people get on bikes, they're going to be transitioning the bikes from downtown to waterfront, waterfront to downtown. So the B-Cycle, the company, they're going to monitor the bikes and reposition the bikes and make sure the batteries are charged and maintain the bikes in a safe, so that they're safe to operate. But I have not been given the exact quantity that they're proposing for the waterfront, but it's just a, 25% of the total probably.
Okay, that's still a lot of bikes. Okay. Right, yeah.
If the bikes can go 17 miles an hour, if you have whatever number of bikes, seems like a lot, but mixing with very heavy foot traffic at times in the harbor, bikes that can go that fast, it just seems like a possibility of a lot of accidents. Just a comment.
Yes, that's why I highlighted the speed of the bicycles. I have the same concern, and we'll share that with the Public Works Department.
Yeah, we have the crossing at the parking lot going into the launch ramp that they're going to be using. We have the crossing at Harper Way that gets a lot of pedestrian traffic in addition to bike traffic. So this is something I think that needs good consideration.
Absolutely. And the other thing in terms of the design, I mean, just seeing those graphics that you showed, when the waterfront wanted to put in the pay stations in the various departments, I mean, in the various water parking areas, they had to go through an extensive HLC discussion. None of those drawings, none of those illustrations that you showed look to me appropriate for the waterfront at all. So I make that observation, but I know that there were months long. So Carl Treiberg spent months before the HLC discussing these things. So
I will review with Mike on what options we have to meet with the Public Works Department and get a better understanding. Yes, Commissioner McCray.
Yeah, Brian, I just wanted to thank you for keeping your eyes open and bringing this to our attention. You can see that it's drawn quite a bit of interest amongst us. Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you for your comments. It's very important to make sure that our voices are heard from the waterfront and we have a better program in the end.
whereabouts exactly would it be in the harbor? It's not clear. I mean, it says on the graphs that you showed, or at least the wasn't enough detail to tell.
Yeah, I don't have much detail from the Public Works Department. Those red dots were kind of proposals, but they're not the final. But we can get some more detail on that, and I can bring it back with that detail. But they were trying to put the bicycle stands, docks on existing concrete areas that would not impede traffic flow and would be safe. But they've been researching it and trying to find safe, productive solutions. And this is what they've come up with so far.
Have they looked at the summer traffic here? I mean, pedestrian traffic? I mean, it's huge. People moving back and forth, and I don't know.
Yeah, so maybe we can propose the bikes could be used certain times of the year, not during the peak pedestrian tourist time. I'm not sure, but I could bounce that off Public Works as well.
Well, the kiosks and the docking stations would be pretty ugly, and they seem to me to be totally not appropriate for the waterfront.
Hey, Brian, this graphic right here, this map here, just shows the coastal zone. Where did the red dots go in other zones? I assume there are other zones.
Yeah.
Is that's the total number of dots there? It shows like we're going to have 250 bikes down on the waterfront.
Again, correction, the total program is 250 for the waterfront. You know, the bikes will be transient all over but for the waterfront, probably 75 bikes. But
Yeah.
But they
And
will.
that's my question. This is a coastal zone. Where are the red dots in the rest of the town?
I can get a map and send that to the commissioners if you wish.
I think, as Merritt pointed out, and you've heard from Betsy and I, there's some concern here. And so, would it be possible that we got somebody from Public Works or whoever's responsible for this program to make a presentation to us? And I'd like to hear public safety weigh in on this. What does the police department and the harbor patrol think of those bikes and that speed with all of the pedestrians that we have crossing the bikeway and things like that? I mean, this is concerning.
I will invite them to come speak with the commission, Harbor Commission. I'm sure they'll be very glad to do so and hear your comments and try to address our concerns.
Yeah, that'd be great. And by the way, welcome, Brian. Sorry to jump on you on your first presentation, but welcome to the waterfront.
Thank you, and I'm glad to tackle challenges like this. So no worries, it's important, and we'll get a better understanding and voice our opinion and make it a safer environment and inviting for everybody.
And Chair Sly and Commissioners, I'll hop in for just a second. Well, first, thanks, Brian. If you weren't here, it would have been me taking all these questions. So appreciate that. But just one note. So this, as Brian mentioned, this has gone through all of that scrutiny. So this isn't a waterfront project; it's a public works project, and so I can tell that there's a lot of interest in it. And so we'll dig in and get involved, but a lot of this stuff is out of our control. We can make recommendations, but Public Works is vetting this through traffic and safety and PD. And so we're just kind of a receiver of this project. So we'll do what we can to get somebody from PW to come down and speak and get our input from the Harbor Commission's input on this project. So it's good to see that there's this much interest. It was, as Brian mentioned, this was really just informational on a project that was being led not by us.
Yeah, and I kind of gathered that, Mike, but since it is on appeal, perhaps we may have a voice in it if there are some concerns.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, I have a question for you. Is there a revenue component to this program?
Not to the waterfront department. I'm not sure what the agreement is between B-Cycle and the city. From my last involvement with this project, I believe B-Cycle is just supplying all of the bikes and maintenance, and they have an agreement to be the holder of it. I don't believe any revenue is going to the city. I believe this is a service that the city was after. There was some push for it, and so I don't think so, but I'll get an answer for you.
Great, thanks.
Yes.
I would just like to add a little footnote here that 17 miles, excuse me, 17 miles an hour is 25 feet per second. Bikes going at 25 feet per second, mixing with pedestrians is a little scary to me.
Yeah, good point, Lang.
All right, thank you for your time.
Looks like we have a planning commissioner on the screen.
Leslie joined us. Hi, Leslie.
Commissioner Kramer?
Yeah, hi. Mike Wiltshire, please. Could you check and see if at any point the waterfront has ever allowed a private industry to use the city property? My knowledge, this has not happened before. At some point, there was a thought of installing a helicopter takeoff or something at the end of Stearns Wharf, and that was knocked down. But it seems to me a kind of a precedent to have this sort of thing in waterfront property. And I'd like to know if you could check into that, please.
Yeah, Commissioner Kramer, I'm just offhand, it's maybe not common, but I mean, I know Verizon uses our space for antennas. I know there's some other use of private enterprise utilizing not only city space, but waterfront space. I know this is kind of different than that and has maybe a more wider spread impact, but
Yeah.
I can get you some answers on that.
Okay, great, thank you.
We have someone someone from the Planning Commission, I think, Mr. Wisecombe.
Good evening, Harbor Commissioners. I just wanted to comment on this item about the bike share program. It was controversial at the Planning Commission, and we decided on 3 locations for the kiosks, which are 9 feet tall. You should know that. And we learned that at the Planning Commission meeting. And we asked that they be divided up in terms of geographical area from east side to central to west side. And I think that it will be important for all of you to follow the appeal at the Planning Commission, at the City Council meeting next week to see what transpires from the bike share program in the coastal zone. And I appreciate all of your comments. I think they were really great. And I'll be following this with a lot of interest. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Leslie.
Yeah, hey, Leslie, before you leave, so is this program citywide and this map that we're looking at right here just a coastal zone, or is this the total program?
Well, the Planning Commission looked at it in the coastal zone because we had to vote on issuing a coastal development permit. And so it is citywide, but it's mainly State Street oriented. So you will see in a presentation a lot of, and they've already implemented the infrastructure for the bikes on State Street. So you'll see that in the presentation. And if you watch the Planning Commission meeting, you'll see a broader presentation of the whole program. But it is a private enterprise program, and it is, and one of your commissioners noted that, and it is devoted to the coastal zone and to State Street for tourists.
And so in the city's analysis of this, did they look at the breakdown between, let's call it visitor serving and residents, and what they think the breakdown of the usage of these things would be?
The Planning Commission was able to make the findings, not majority, but not unanimous, but was able to make the findings for the general plan consensus with the general plan for the bicycle share the B-cycle program. So I think it's important for you to look at that and to decide if you think that as the waterfront and the harbor, you agree with that. There were several commissioners that made comments about the kiosks. That was a very big issue on the Planning Commission. We learned at the meeting, not before, but at the meeting, that the kiosks are 9 feet high. And several of us queried whether they belonged at in the parking lots, hidden in the parking lots, as opposed to on the north side of Cabrillo. And our decision came down on the north side of Cabrillo because we had little staff support for the parking lots. But I think some of the commissioners believe that the parking lots would be an appropriate place for the kiosks. And the kiosks basically serve people that don't have the apps to access the bicycles.
But then now we got bicycles going 17 miles an hour, pedestrians and cars in the parking lot. How does this all work? I mean, this block just gets thicker all the time.
When was the planning commission meeting, Leslie?
Actually, Commissioner Kramer, I don't remember when it was. I'm sorry. I'm watching your commission meeting tonight. This is my third one of the night, and I'm watching it, and I'm thinking, well, I better get on here and comment. And I really apologize, but I don't remember when our meeting was that discussed that. But there will be an appeal next week on January 26th at the city council for the bicycle program.
Okay. Well, thank you, Leslie. Appreciate your time and information.
Well, and thank you all for your dedication.
Thank you, Leslie.
I have another thought. It's disappointing to me, I guess, that this much work has been put into this program and decisions have been made, and we're 5 days away from a city council appeal, and this is the first, as a commission, we're hearing about this. And I'd like to hear some discussion or thoughts from commissioners as to whether we at least might want to convey to the council that we have some concerns about the placement and the density and the traffic collision issues and so forth, in time for it to get to the council for that deliberation on January 26th, which I think is next Tuesday. Any thoughts?
Do we have, isn't Councilmember Jordan our liaison, and is he on tonight?
He is our liaison, and I don't believe he's on tonight.
So maybe making our concerns known to him, and I don't know if we have time to do it collectively, but maybe we do it individually.
Well, would it be possible to write have a brief letter written to the council as a whole? I mean, beyond just to Mike Jordan,
Right.
expressing our concerns for the various areas and so,
Yeah,
anybody?
good idea, Betsy.
Yeah, I think we go straight to the council, given the short time frame that we have. And to Lang's point, I mean, it seems like a lot of this stuff was moving along during our recess period, and now it's just being thrown into our laps.
I completely agree, and I think one of the key aspects of our interest is not so much the idea of a bike program. It's the public safety issue that you mentioned, Commissioner Sloan. I have read stories about frequent collisions occurring between bicycles and pedestrians at the mouth of Stearns Wharf. And when we put these folks in the parking lot and along the bike trail, I think our biggest issue is that we are going to have to do, or the waterfront department is going to have to deal with this public safety issue, which could be huge.
Yes.
And we'd like to see, we would like to have some awareness of what considerations were given to address the public safety issues associated with the mix. So I completely support sending the letter to all commissioners, all council members.
It's not just along, excuse me, it's not just along by Stearns Wharf. It's dangerous. It's the bike path throughout the harbor. I mean, it's really summer weekends.
I agree.
It's
I
really
agree
difficult.
completely.
It's Harbor Way, it's Ledbetter,
Yep.
I mean, the list is long. I mean, even 75 bikes down there all the time is a lot of bikes, you know? I mean, in addition to the pedestrian traffic and the current bikes down there and the Surreys that they rent out there, I mean, those things take up the whole bike path. I mean, you know, and we've all seen it down there on a busy summer weekend. It's a lot of people. So how do we go about sending this letter to council?
These are not battle-hardened New Yorkers walking the last few blocks to work. These are distracted strollers who are looking out at the water and not protecting themselves. So it's an issue.
But you make a great point, Lang. The speed over land argument, I think, can just be extended, you know, to so many public safety points. That was a great item that you brought up. You must have been a pilot. You must have been a pilot, Lang.
I'm a pilot. I can convert to feet per second. So would a possible scenario be to ask Mr. Wilshire to kind of synthesize our comments and do a draft of a letter to the council and circulate it to the commissioners for a little more input, and then finalize something maybe first of the week, Monday?
I make a motion to that effect, that there be such a letter.
Yeah, if I could step in for just a sec, there's a couple ways to make this happen. So yeah, Commissioner Kramer, you're on the right line. We kind of need all of the commission to weigh in on this. So it sounds like it's fairly unanimous, but this would be something, if we were to push it forward, I need to be able to say that there was a vote or a motion that everybody agreed on it. So it seems like we've heard a lot on it, but if you wanted to make a motion for us to, and kind of detailing your points or concerns, I can put that together in a letter. But I need to know how many of you are in support of that and how many of you are not.
Okay, well, I think the motion's been made and I'll second it.
What was the motion specifically?
The motion basically to incorporate what Lang Sly just said, and so perhaps he should rephrase it.
Well, I think it incorporates not only the public safety issue, but the space issue, the private enterprise and the harbor. I think it encompasses a number of the points that have been brought up.
And I think harbor staff might have some useful ideas on, if this does happen, on placement of kiosk and charging stations. Nobody understands the harbor, the operations, the traffic patterns, and all the interfaces like the staff does. So it's a little troubling to me that these decisions are being made and we're left out. My suggestion again was to our staff to draft a letter, circulate it to the commission for input, maybe make some amendments to the letter and try to get it to the council on Monday prior to the Tuesday hearing. So if Betsy agrees, that was kind of the basis for the motion.
Right, absolutely agree.
And I'll second that.
And I'd just like to add that I agree with Chair Sly that I think that the issue here is not the program so much, but the location of the kiosks. And so I think that your weigh-in as a Harbor Commission on the location of the kiosks is essentially very important.
Let's see, am I on? Okay, well, let's, any further discussion before we take a vote on this motion? And let's just do a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, I think we have a unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners, for your time and support and review of this program.
Yeah, and commissioners, we'll take a little bit of the blame for not bringing this to you sooner. There's so much going on, and in hindsight, seeing how much interest there is in something like this, as it gets going, it seems sort of harmless. This improvement to transportation, bike share is kind of a reaction to what was going on with the scooters a year or so ago, and so I'll take some ownership of that and try to make sure that this stuff gets in front of you sooner, especially with waterfront impacts.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, and can we move on to the operations report now?
Good evening, Chair Sly and Commissioners. Hope you all are staying healthy and safe during these trying times. I'd like to introduce myself to our newest commissioner. My name is Eric Ingebretson, and I'm the Harbor Operations Manager. Welcome. Just a quick, brief operations report tonight. As always, we in the past have had a recap of our Parade of Lights. Next slide. And this year we had some challenges, but we also had some really creative folks that helped put us together a paradeless light, parade of lights, if you will. And we were still had 25 boats that decorated their vessels, and we conducted the contest virtually. So we eliminated all the crowds. None of the boats had to leave their slips, which was a great idea. And like I said, we had 25 participants. The boats were photographed in their slips, and then those photographs were posted online. And judging also was a little different this year. We did it on online judging, and we had approximately 900 votes from the public. Next slide, please. So our first place winners this year, we in the categories of commercial fishing was the vessel Perseverance. And our first place winner in the commercial other was the vessel Scrub-a-Dub, and sailboat Natural Mystic, which is pictured here, placed first place, and as well was the grand prize winner. The powerboat Coconut also got first place. Gift pack for the grand prize honors was approximately $1,000, and that came through sponsorships. And we really want to thank all those, especially our restaurants that contributed to this event, especially during these tough times. And then, of course, this wouldn't have gone down without our administrative assistant, Chris Bell. He worked on this tirelessly, and went around, took the photos, and just did a great job from beginning to end. Next slide, please. Well, it's that time of the year again, and the Fisheries Enhancement Fund still has the program available for safety equipment for commercial fishing or fishermen. And they've also increased those amounts since this is the only program they currently have in operation. Commercial fishermen can get reimbursed for EPIRBs, life rafts, repacking life rafts, flares, and immersion suits. And that's available through the county. And if there's any questions, folks can contact Kathy Pfeiffer, the county planner, at kathypm@co.santabarbara.ca.us, or by our phone number, 805-568-2507. Next slide, please. Well, as reported at the November Harbor Commission, we had a a sailing vessel out in our anchorage that broke loose, and it ended up on a county beach. And the name of the boat was Peaceful Warrior, and it remained in this kind of tough area to get it off the beach for almost a month. Gila Ocean facilitated the vessel's removal. Hillary Hauser reached out to me, as well as the Sheriff's Department, on ideas to get this vessel removed. And unlike our beaches, which are easily accessible, this area is kind of tough, so it had to be timed with the tides. But the Johnson Ohana Charitable Foundation and Gila Ocean funded the removal of this particular boat from the beach. And can you play that video on this slide, Angela? So as you can see, they work pretty quick. I just a huge shout out to Hillary Hauser from Gila Ocean and Brian Borgatello. I've worked with them both closely on other things and as well as this, and have met with them sidebar on how we can further deter some of these crafts from ending up on the beach. And they've come up with some really good ideas. And so, we all enjoy the same mission of keeping our beaches and ocean clean. And I finished before the slide's over, so I guess my speech was quicker. So we can go to the next slide. And again, we had, in October, we had reported that ExxonMobil had approached us about using the city pier for some crew exchange. And we did have some concerns in the beginning about oversubscription of this area and whether or not it would impact our commercial fishermen as well as our pleasure craft. And I worked closely with Kathy Pfeiffer, again, from the county, and we came up with a plan that ExxonMobil could use a certain area of the pier for crew exchange operations. Happy that in the last 2 months, we have had no issues to report, no complaints, no concerns. They've gone down flawlessly. Since then, we have been approached by Beacon West, formerly Vinico, and Halliburton with similar requests. Beacon West also reached out to the county, and I believe they are currently conducting crew exchanges using the Goleta Pier, and have since not discussed any further use of our city pier. And again, Halliburton, they have been looking at other alternatives as well. But we'll keep you posted on that, and we certainly don't want to impact the rest of our harbor community. But so far with ExxonMobil, it's been going really smooth. And I think that's the end of my report. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Michael Nelson.
Eric, what's the engagement of the county? Because I know Kathy works in the energy division. Is there a permit issue that they're dealing with or focusing on, or are they just interested in what Exxon's up to?
Oh, Exxon's not, all they're trying to do is they're just transporting crew members because as previously reported, the Elwood Pier, there was an issue with the landowner and having access to that pier. In the meantime, until they have negotiated a deal, they are temporarily using our pier for crew exchanges. And this is part of the Plains crew, and it's very minimal. It's you might see the crew boat there for 15 minutes at a time. It's not as though ExxonMobil is trying to do anything permanently. This was just an alternative means to offload passengers.
No, I'm sure that's correct. I'm just curious about the county's involvement. What jurisdiction does the county have in this, and why would the energy division of the county planning department be involved?
I believe the county, they had a plan in place with the oil rigs, and they wanted to make sure that any of the plans that deviated from what was in place, that they had an agreement and something that they could agree to, as well as the waterfront. And according to Kathy at the time, if we didn't have some sort of agreement in place, then the county wasn't on board, because she was very sensitive to whether or not the commercial fishermen would be impacted by, you know, some of the crew boats coming in, or the pleasure craft as well.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I just have a quick comment, Eric. Just in regards to the Parade of Lights, I've been a participant the past few years in this, and also participated in the Paradeless one this year. And just want to say I'm really thankful that this was put together due to the circumstances. You know, I know this event really brings a lot of joy and festivity to the harbor, as well as to a lot of the visitors that come by. And I think this is just one of the events to make the harbor unique and special. And really the popularity was evidenced by, I thought, the overwhelming amount of voting. So I just want to say we appreciate the time that was spent putting this together this year. So thanks.
Oh, yeah, more than welcome. I'm glad it worked out. And again, we have some very creative staff here. I was somewhat, I wasn't trying to be a downer about the whole thing, but boy, I'll tell you, Chris and some of our administrative staff, Jeanette Krasinski and Samantha Casey, really got their heads together and put on a great event.
They did. Thanks.
Yeah, good job to get that done under the current circumstances. Any other questions on this report? Thank you, Mr. Ingebrigtsen. We'll go to number 7, which is. I'm sorry.
Has a question.
Oh, Merritt had a question.
Comments.
Didn't see you.
Commissioner McCray?
Yes, I would like to first note that safety grant is a great thing, and those safety gear that's mentioned, the 406 EPIRB, the immersion suits, the IBAs, all of that is actually required of the commercial fishing vessels, and it comes at a great expense. Some of those things can be over $1,000 for the stuff, and so the grant only covers a small portion of what's required of those people. Also, I took a kind of a little bit deeper look at what's going on at Goleta Pier, and what I discovered is it looks like the property transferred. It used to be Veneco property, I believe. It transferred out to private ownership, and it's about 40 acres, you know, about half on each side of the railroad tracks. And I'm not sure if the pier ownership transferred with it, but I suspect it may have. The property owners submitted a notice of preparation under CEQA for a house on the property, actually a pretty nice house. And so when I look at it all in total, I get the impression that this may be like a permanent situation rather than a temporary setback in negotiation. And I was wondering if that's the general gist of it, and how long we could expect these companies to need the use of either Goleta Pier or our pier at the Navy Pier, or both in combination. Would it potentially be for the entire time that Holly is being decommissioned, for example?
That's a great question, and I can answer part of it. I do know that the pier is owned by the state. I know what's being negotiated is the easement to the pier. So I think that's the hang up. The owner is in negotiations with Exxon. On the latter part of your question as to whether or not they'll be using the city pier until the end of the decommissioning of the platform, that I wouldn't know, unless, you know, something came up and they said, hey, this just isn't working. We need to get into a different type of more permanent situation. And I think we could address that when the time comes. But for right now, I've made it clear this is a temporary agreement, so to speak.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it's actually, Exxon has nothing to do with the decommissioning of Holly. Oh, wait a minute. I take that back. I believe they do. At some level, but they're not the lead in it, that's for sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Okay, thank you. So we'll go to number 7, which is an extension of an agreement with Echo Wireless for Harbor Wireless Internet Service. And I think that takes us back to Mr. Bossy.
Good evening again, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this is a service agreement, or proposed service agreement with Echo Wireless. Echo Wireless has been a service provider in the harbor for nearly a decade, and they were selected as such through a competitive request for proposal process. Next slide, please. The proposed term is a 5-year service agreement whereby the concession, Echo Wireless, would be paying the city approximately $960 in years 1, 2, and 3, and then, I'm sorry, that's a mistake, that's an error. 1, 2, and 3 at $960, and then years 4 and 5, not 3 through 5. Years 4 and 5 would be $1,200 a year. They provide wireless services to visitors as well as liveaboards and anybody in between in the waterfront. You'll notice that it's a nominal fee. We don't generate a lot of income from this endeavor. It is primarily because this is a service that we provide for visitors as well as tenants. It's more of an amenity than anything else for harbor users as opposed to a revenue source for the harbor. They've been a tenant in good standing. They pay on time. They're consistently upgrading their technology to stay on the cutting edge. They're very adept at harbors, which are a unique place to have Wi-Fi, as you can imagine, setting up the different antennas and things, the masts, the boats themselves, constantly blocking and shearing off the signals from internet. So these folks are very good at what they do. They have systems set up all over the West Coast: Long Beach Shoreline Marina, Long Beach Alamitos Marina, Long Beach Rainbow Marina, King Harbor, Oceanside Harbor, Peters Landing in Huntington Beach, Sunset Aquatic in Huntington Beach, Bellingham Marina in Washington, Port of Edmonds in Washington, as well as the Port of Seattle. So they're very knowledgeable in the trade. And again, a simple service agreement for internet services for visitors as well as residents as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about this proposed service agreement.
Brian, I have 2 questions, I think. Do you know if the equipment that they're using is what they will propose to continue to use, or are they proposing any upgrades or thinking of upgrades to equipment?
Chair Sly, I'm not aware of any immediate plans to change, but they're in constant contact with our staff, both myself and Patrick Henry, and are generally ahead of the curve as far as technology is considered. So they'll let us know when they're coming in to upgrade a system or change out an antenna or a piece of equipment. So I can look into that further as far as what their plans are for the near future and where they're going. But we've never really had to worry about that because they've always been up to speed on technology.
Okay, and part 2 is I'd like to hear from the other commissioners their thoughts on the fact that if they don't have a capital improvement program that they have to provide, given that companies' performance can change. I guess their track record's pretty good here, but and that the technology is constantly changing and could substantially change. Maybe it would be wiser to have a 3-year deal so that we're not locked in for 5 years. It doesn't seem disadvantageous to them in the sense that It's not like they've got a big investment, current and future investment that they've got to amortize over a period of years. The equipment's already in place, and I would just think that maybe might be better for the harbor to make that a 3-year deal and have a little flexibility if the technology were to change. I'd like to get other commissioners' thoughts on that.
I have personal experience with this from the boat we had in the harbor. I found that they were really good to work with. We had some signal issues, and they worked hard to fix them for us. We set up a 1-year subscription, and it seemed to be fairly reasonable. And so, I've had good experience with this company, and their customer service was very, very good and responsive, and solved my problems. So they actually added an extra wireless access point for us. So I've had a very positive experience.
Yeah. And I've used them in the Oceanside Harbor, and I also had good experience, and I thought they did a good job. But again, just thinking of more flexibility for the harbor if we had a deal that's a little bit shorter.
Oh yeah, if I could add to that also, just I noticed that from the board, it said it's kind of provided primarily as a additional service for visiting boaters, because I know that there's also Cox Communication that provides more of a permanent service for a wireless and internet. So yeah, I think it's good that at least we have another option available here with this Eco Wireless. It seems to have been satisfying to a lot of my colleagues here at the harbor.
I think Lang makes a good point about technology, though. I mean, it changes so rapidly, Brian. A shorter contract term might be more advantageous.
Sure, and if I can address that, I can sort of understand your concern. We've never had a problem with Echo staying on top of the technology, so it's not a concern of mine. I think if you were to propose a 3-year and a 2-year, you're definitely not going to get any upgrades, because they are going to want to amortize as much as possible, and amortizing over a 5-year period is significantly better than a 3-year period. So that is something to consider. So it's just like our big leases. We had a discussion about 1.5 years ago about Harbor Marine Works. They have to dump a lot of money into that, and they want a longer lease term to amortize. So it's never been a problem in the past, their technology updates, but we're here for your direction, and we can do whatever it is you choose to do, and we'll make that happen.
Lang, what if we were to add some language in there that it's a 5-year term, but they have to stay on top of the technology upgrades as part of the condition of the lease?
I don't know how you would write that in, but Mr. Bossi's pretty good at that. So maybe he can put a provision to that effect in.
Yeah, and we can easily do that. What else I can do is I can put in there, ask or request of them, even before we sign this, is to have them provide us with maybe their update plan for what they're going to do over the next 5 years as far as the equipment is concerned, and make sure that that's up to snuff, that we're not sitting in 2G or 1G or something like that. Yeah, exactly.
Technology update roadmap. Perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Good idea.
Put that in the service agreement.
Sure. Yeah, we can attach it as an
You can
attachment.
make that a requirement of the service agreement that they present the plan to you each year.
Yeah, I think they have a good track record, and I think if we attach their technology roadmap to the plan, they're obviously going to update it periodically as technology changes, and I would assume that they would submit that to the city if we got in the habit of requesting.
Yeah, we can do that. And again, I'm glad you folks have had good experiences with them. We do as well. When there's an issue, they're very adept. They can just call in, and they've actually had our front office staff go into our air-conditioned closet with all of our computer equipment and hookups and flip different switches and make it work. So they're very adept and knowledgeable at what they're doing. So I can include all that, a year-by-year service plan as an attachment to the agreement, just to make sure that they're staying on top. And I can even review that with our IT folks. So since I'm not a IT guru, I can have that reviewed by our IT staff over at City Hall and make sure it's all good.
So I guess based on that, I'd make a motion that we accept this with the stipulation that they provide us with a technology upgrade roadmap as attached to the lease and periodic updates to that.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion of the motion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? I think we have a unanimous approval. Thank you. And Mr. Bossy, you're going to roll into item number 8.
Yes, let's keep the good times going.
Yeah. Momentum.
Okay, this is a review of proposals for 125 Harbor Way, number 14, a small office space in the building next door to us here at the Harbor. Just a little bit of history. Well, even before I get into that, we have had some significant changes in the last 24 hours. We are now down to one proposal. So that definitely speeds up my my presentation, but I will still go through the majority of it just to give you an idea of how we conduct these requests for proposal processes, because they are very few and far between. So I'll get into the changes in a minute here, but again, this is for an office space at 125 Harbor Way, number 14. It's about 150 square feet, and we were notified back in the fall that Brophy Brothers, who used to use this as well as 2 other offices, for a total of 3, they wanted to scale down their footprint, save some money. Obviously, with the COVID pandemic, they were looking for ways to trim costs. So this office became available. We had our facility staff go in there, recarpet it, repaint it, replace the tiles in the ceiling, and really give it a freshening up. Here are a couple photos for you, located right across from Brophy Brothers. Next slide, please. So again, this does not happen very often where a space becomes available. So just as far as our proposal process, we developed a request for proposals. It was issued on October 14th. It was due on the 1st of December. So folks were given 7 weeks to prepare their proposal. It was marketed on the city as well as the Waterfront's website. It was emailed to every one of our 61 existing tenants. It was also emailed to over 100 individuals and or entities that were on our interested parties list. We get calls weekly about space being available, and we keep track of those names, phone numbers, and emails in case something like this does come up. Everything was due. We had a strict deadline to make it a level playing field for all submittals, so there were no late submittals accepted. Next slide, please. So as far as the contents of the request for proposal, an introduction kind of discussing the harbor and what it was all about. I believe this was also part of your package for this month's meeting. Proposal contents had to include the business concept, applicant information, as well as financial information. We also discussed the basic business terms. We also provide a sample lease, so folks are very well aware of what they're looking at possibly getting into if they are successful with this process. And we also include insurance requirements, because that's a big deal here at the city. We have pretty strong insurance requirements, and it costs our tenants money to get those insurance requirements. As far as an evaluation, staff goes through and reviews those, a total of 100 points, divided as you can see on the screen, 40 for the business plan, 20 for the management applicant information, and then 40 more for the financial information. Next slide, please. So originally, there were 3 proposals submitted. One of those proposals was withdrawn about a week after submittal. And so staff ended up with reviewing 2 proposals, one by the Commercial Fishermen of Santa Barbara and the other by Celebration Cruises. Both are existing waterfront tenants in good standing. Now, the news that I discussed at the start of this, yesterday, early afternoon, the commercial fishermen of Santa Barbara withdrew their proposal. And so we are now down to one proposal, and that's Celebration Cruises. So I'm going to talk about what they propose as far as the use for that particular space. Next slide, please. So again, these are the three main areas we're looking at: business plan, management application, applicant information, and our financial information. Next slide, please. So Celebration Cruises, they are proposing to use it as an office space, which will allow them to continue to grow their business. They prefer a 3-year lease agreement with a 2-year option for starters. Celebration is considered a coastal dependent use per the Waterfront Department's 5-year review of uses, which you folks, or most of you, reviewed in July of 2019. We do that again every 5 years, so it's going to be a while. Next slide. Management applicant information. It's a family-owned and operated business. Military service. Captain Fred was in the military, and we thank him for his service. Part of the harbor for nearly 2 decades, and they currently have a separate 5-year license agreement with a 5-year option, and they operate the Azure Seas, which is a luxury yacht. They also operate the Whisper, which is an electric boat that you'll see running around the harbor, and they also operate the very famous Little Toot. Next slide, please. Financial information, all their credit references were provided as we had requested. They have no litigation current or pending, always a good thing, and keeps you in good standing with the Waterfront Department. They're submitted their financial statements, including profit loss data, as well as personal tax statements. And they submitted numerous credit reports showing that Celebration Cruises has excellent credit. Next slide, please. So again, this is going to change a little since we're down to one possible candidate at this time, at least in this current request for proposal process. Again, very strong candidate, Celebration Cruises. They've been in the harbor for decades. The proposal is for an office use to allow them to continue to grow, which in fact, you know, one of the few businesses, they actually went out during COVID and got involved, had a parasail operation come in as a sublease with their other lease agreement, and that has been generating, or up until recently, in the cold weather, has generated a significant amount of additional income, both for Celebration Cruises as well as the Waterfront Department. Again, they're an ocean dependent use per the Waterfront Department's 5-year review of uses, and their proposed use fits into the local coastal program as well as the Coastal Act guidelines. Next slide, please. The direct financial return to the waterfront, if they continue to grow, they are on a percentage rent basis. They have a base, but also percentage rent. So the more their revenue grows, the more the Waterfront Department receives back. They're a very financially stable business, and they have an exceptional credit rating. So we are just left with one at this particular point, but it's a good one. So next slide, please. I believe that's it. All right. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Back in December, I believe it was the 18th, Friday the 18th, we met with the RFP subcommittee, excuse me, and that was Commissioner Sloan and Commissioner Spicer. And they reviewed both proposals and decided it'd be best if they moved both proposals forward for the full Harbor Commission to consider. So again, we discussed the details and merits of both of those, and they brought it forward to you for discussion. So happy to answer any questions. And it would be nice if you could get some direction from you folks if it's appropriate. So again, happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that we did meet, and we have 2 excellent candidates, and we reviewed everything and talked through it. And at the end of the meeting, Bill and I decided that it was too tough a decision to make, and we'd bring it to the whole commission. And obviously, since then, it's a decision that doesn't need to be made, since we only have one current participant.
And if I just want to clarify one thing. So for now, if the commission is okay with this, we are looking for your direction to go and negotiate a proposed lease agreement with Celebrity. And then we would come back at a future meeting with that lease agreement for your consideration. So, and that was going to be whether it was 1 or 2 or 3 proposals. So that's what we ask of you tonight.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we move on that.
And I'll second it. I'll
Any
second.
any further discussion of that motion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, I think we have a unanimous on that. Thank you.
Chair Sly, before we move on from this item, we did have one public comment from Chris Voss. Chris
Okay.
Voss,
Good.
I'm going to unmute you and you may begin speaking.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Chris Voss, and as you know, I'm President of the Commercial Fishermen of Santa Barbara. And I just want to thank the department staff and the commissioners on the subcommittee that considered our proposal to lease this space. And I think it's great that Celebration is receiving this lease. It's a great company, and they're great people, and I'm glad that they're getting that office space. And then I also wanted to add, as I've done in the past, my gratitude to all of you for what you do on all of our behalf by volunteering to be harbor commissioners. I think I'm kind of moved because of what's happened nationally, that we need to step up and show the appreciation that is deserved of groups like this that volunteer their time to do governance on a small scale that's critical to the functioning, of our democracy. I realize you guys are appointed by elected commissioners, but I think you play a critical role in, maintaining good social function. And I respect all of you for the time you commit for this, the role you play as harbor commissioners. So I just think it's important, given what's happening in our country, to extend our appreciation for the work that you do. And, we're the commercial fisherman community in Santa Barbara is exceptionally lucky for the hoists that are maintained, the ice house that is being restored, all the special consideration we get because of a long history of this community's commitment to the fishing community. So this broader community's commitment to the fishing community. So I thank you all and appreciate the work you do.
Thank you, Mr. Voss. We appreciate your comments and your thoughtfulness. Thank you. We're going to move on to item 9 on the agenda, which is the tentative list of future commission items to be considered.
Yeah, Chair Sly, I'll take it from here. Thanks for hanging in. It's a bit of a longer meeting. So I think this is something new for the commission, and this is really as much for myself and waterfront staff as it is for the commission. I think it's a good idea, and I wanted to lay out a tentative calendar for the year to come to get a sense of some of the key items that we want to discuss. This list was emailed out to you guys, I believe, yesterday. And so this is really intended as an opportunity for you to let staff know if there's any major topics you'd like to discuss or see us fit into upcoming meetings. It's really not intended to be set in stone, but more kind of used as a roadmap and a general idea of discussion topics so that us, staff, can tee them up in advance. Most of the items on this list are kind of regular occurring business that we take care of, but there are a couple in here that were pending. So things such as the state lands presentation and a presentation from APCD. And I'm assuming you still want us to pursue those. But with that, I'll kind of turn it over to you as the commission to kind of discuss any recommended topics, or this would now be kind of a time if there's anything you want us to jockey around and slot onto the list for the year. It would be a chance for you guys to weigh in.
regret that I'm the only one who wants to speak on this item. I'm very comfortable with the items that you have identified a year in advance, but I became aware early on when I became a commissioner that as a commissioner, I can make a request to you as long as it's in advance, and I'd have copies and talk with you and all that. So I can literally, as a commissioner, put an item before the Harbor Commission. And I hope that by us approving these items, I like the word tentative, that we're not in any way inhibiting the ability for a commissioner to bring an item before the Harbor Commission.
Yeah,
Thanks, Commissioner Nelson. No, that's not the intent at all. This is really just a planning document so that we as staff can kind of tee some of this up. Some of these items take time to put together, and there's some effort behind the scenes that goes on. So the sooner we know, the better. That's really the only intent with this.
And the only, that said, that's great. Earlier we had a decent conversation about the impacts of the pandemic on your budget and how you were dealing with those impacts, that you were, cannibalizing general funds from vacant positions, that you were deferring some capital programs or maintenance items and that sort of thing. And everybody, and Brian gave his presentation on the impact of continued rent deferrals. I almost think there ought to be part of Brian's presentation on business operations each month, that we get sort of a snapshot of what's happening. If that's possible, because I know that whether you're up 15% or down 20%, because I, for one, would like to be aware of how you're doing this. It's a tremendous challenge that you're confronted with. But I think the commission ought to weigh in if you're making a decision not to fill positions, or you're making a decision not to go forward with capital items. I thought there ought to be a continuing discussion with the commission on how you're dealing with the economic impacts of the pandemic. And so if Brian could do that as part of his monthly presentations, that would be great.
Yeah, okay, noted. And just to know that a lot of work does go into this. So in a regular world, kind of quarterly budget updates at the frequency we usually gave them seem to be enough. I agree, things are changing really rapidly right now. So we'll do the best we can to keep you in the loop with all that on a regular basis.
Thank you.
And I'd like to endorse Commissioner Nelson's idea for, even if it's just a half a dozen line items taken out of the last month's budget to kind of show where we were in the budget versus where we are in real life and what's happening with the deferrals and repayment of the deferrals, so forth. I think that would be very, very helpful, and kind of not let it sneak up on us at the end of the fiscal year. The other comment I would make is, and I in no way want to imply that I'm trying to wiggle out of my job here, but I noticed that there are elections in August with probably not having a July meeting. Is it problematic to be 2 months into the next fiscal year before we do elections? And if so, should we move that to June, or does it really matter?
I don't think it particularly matters. We can move it to June.
Yeah, perhaps I could comment on that. Since it's the first meeting of the new fiscal year, we usually do the elections first thing and then hand the gavel over. So it's really, yes, it's 2 months into it, but it's the first meeting of the new year, and it's run by the new officers.
Yeah. Okay. So you see that as an okay time?
Yeah, I think,
okay.
Yeah, we've done that for a long time, and I haven't seen a problem with it.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah, and I think, just on this, is that these are kind of a list of standing items that we would talk about. Obviously, there will be other things that get added in here. I actually like this. This kind of lets us all plan the year and see what's coming up, and gives us a little heads up as to when we're going to see and hear what. So I think this is great, but I think also, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, that this is a kind of a standing list of recurring topics that would be talked about. And obviously there would be a lot more filled in on other items.
Yeah, exactly. This doesn't include the sort of our department updates. And so everything that's included in our department updates these are kind of standalone items that would be new business type things. And so, yeah, again, it's not to say that it's going to change. It just gives us kind of a roadmap to show what months are really busy and what months are not as busy type thing. And so we can kind of start shifting things around.
You know, I'd like to comment that I really like this kind of workload planning exercise. And I'd like to suggest that we spend like 5 minutes as the last item in any meeting, taking a look at what's coming up. So everybody knows where the space is and where it isn't. I think it's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. It's great to look at the year sort of encapsulated. It gives a strategic view, Mike. So I think it's a good tool.
Okay, yeah, maybe we can add that to the staff communications at the end of each meeting. That would be helpful. That's good.
And as a part of my director's report, I'll still continue to do my last bullet item as tentative items and upcoming. And so I'll kind of keep that teed up, and that could be a good spot for us to kind of talk about this. And so I'll use this as kind of the backbone of that, and keep anything tentative on that tentative bullet list so it's fresh in your minds.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you. The last item on our almost last item on our agenda is item 10 is the commission committee assignments. And Mr. Wilshire, I assume you would like to comment on that?
Yes, Chair Sly and commissioners. So here is a current list of our subcommittee assignments. And so just for clarification, and because Commissioner Stanwyck is new, so these subcommittees are formed with a maximum of 3 Harbor Commission members. It's supposed to be under a quorum, with the intent of kind of working on specific issues and items and then reporting back to the full Harbor Commission. So a lot of these have kind of been created over time and are now somewhat standing committees. And so every year we go through this list and figure out if people want to switch roles or if there's anywhere to add. We do have some vacancies created by Bill Spicer leaving. So I'll turn it over to the commission now and see if you guys want to make any decisions on moving people around, add yourselves to committees, or possibly dissolve some that aren't being used anymore.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that these are standing committees. I think the Sea Level Rise Adaptation Plan Committee is just about wrapped up. Betsy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that worked there. And I don't think the parking committee's had a meeting in a long time either. So, and that's one point. The second point is that we usually do this at the July or August meeting. So are we talking about committee assignments just for the next 4 or 5 months, or are we talking about resetting the calendar on committee assignments?
Yeah, sorry about that. We're a little off schedule now just because of Bill Spicer leaving and Commissioner Stanwyck joining. So we thought it was kind of a prudent time. If you guys want to just push this down to 6 months away, but that we wanted to give you an opportunity to make some changes now with a new member.
Jim, I think that the Sea Level Rise Adaptation Plan Committee will be continuing. That was one of the votes some months ago. But what it's going to be basically doing, I don't know when it will meet, is basically outreach and publicity and that sort of thing. So it's going to exist. But
yeah, you're correct. It's just, I think most of the heavy lifting's done, and so it'll just be followed.
Right, it is.
You're correct. We did talk about that. I forgot. Thank you.
Sure.
Well, maybe since this list was just, I think we just published this morning maybe or yesterday, what do you think about having everybody think about what committees they might like to be on, and next month making a few reassignments? I would be happy to give up some of mine. Would like to get Adam on some committees and get him involved. And I think Mike has only one committee, so maybe we can redistribute it a little bit to get everybody involved. But people may want to think about where they'd like to end up.
I think that's a great idea, and I would certainly give up some of mine. I know my name's on here quite a bit, and I'd certainly be willing to step down from some of these.
Yeah, Jim, you're a workhorse. I noticed you were on 4 different committees.
I know, I don't know how I did that. I must have missed that meeting.
Raised your hand at the wrong time.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
If I could just raise my hand and just express some interest, I'd be interested in the budget committee. If anybody would like to, step down in the future with that, that'd be something of interest of me that I'd be willing to help out and join on to, if possible.
Noted.
Yeah, I would suggest you go with Lang's idea. Why don't we take a look at this and next month talk about it. Do you see any subcommittee meetings other than the slip assignment policy, Mike, occurring between now and next meeting?
No, not likely. Oh, well, there may well be a budget subcommittee meeting. As Brian mentioned, he was going to try to do that in early February, and then we're going to try and have a slip assignment policy meeting in early February as well. So those two. But we can defer. Those subcommittees are full as of now, and so we can leave them standing and then deal with this at the next meeting.
Okay. I'm on the budget subcommittee, and I'm on a couple of other committees, so I would be willing to move off of that committee, and if Adam would like to take a role on that, and if that's workable with everybody else. Must be a great idea. Total silence. So.
Yep. Good idea, Lang.
Sounds good.
Okay, so Mr. Wiltshire, you'll put that on next month's roster agenda?
Yeah, we can do that with the one change of adding Commissioner Stanwyck in your place on the budget subcommittee.
Okay, sounds good.
Did you want to weigh in tonight on the parking subcommittee, or any ones that potentially, that would be the only one that I could see that hasn't met much and may be in question of dissolving it?
I'm on that committee, and I don't actually recall that committee ever being convened, so maybe there's no longer a need for it. I don't know.
Hi, Commissioner Sly. That was, the last time we met was with the major ordinance changes back in June, July, and August of 2019. So that was the last time we met. And you're right. We don't anticipate any major ordinance changes or policy changes in parking, at least in the near future.
Okay, well, I think it's up to staff as whether you think we should just keep that on the list or close it off for now. I think that staff decision can be made, and you can let us know next month.
And then just for, you'll have to make a motion to dissolve that subcommittee. We can do that next month if you like.
Why don't we do that now? I'd make a motion to dissolve that and to add Adam instead of Lang on the budget committee.
I second that motion.
Seconded.
Okay, good. Any discussion on those two items? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, that's approved. Thank you. And there was a subcommittee meeting yesterday. Is there a report on that, or will we do that later, next time?
We can give you an anecdotal review. I'm the committee chair, Lang. We had a great presentation by a county representative, Luis Anthony, is that his name? I think. And he talked about possessory interest taxation and the formulas that are involved with that. So I thought that was very educational, not only for the committee members, Jim Sloan, Mike Nelson, but for the public that attended. So I think next time there are a couple of, in kind of a linear fashion, there are a couple of agenda items that are under consideration, but we're taking a largely informative and educational approach for the slip holders in kind of a contentious context, right? We have some recurring characters who appear at these meetings and who are pretty vociferous in the positions, you know, that they have and the material and content that they're presenting to staff. So that committee, I would say, is inching along, but in a very deliberate and educational manner.
Yeah, I hope other people, some of those people did listen in, because I listened to most of it, and it was, having never understood why I was being taxed on something that I didn't own. It was very interesting, and obviously something that's not up for negotiation. It's what's been negotiated for 130 years or so, and pretty well set. Okay, thank you, John.
Yeah, you're welcome, Mike.
The final thing on our agenda is any further staff communications.
Yeah, not to draw this one out, I've just got a couple things. I just wanted to circle back and provide some clarification on what I'm going to do to capture your concerns with the bike share. I think that's important. So really the best and easiest way forward is for me to work with Chair Sly. Lang, I'll work with you on a letter kind of summarizing your concerns and indicating that forwarding this letter to council was unanimously approved by Harbor Commission. And so this letter will ultimately come under Chair Sly's signature, but supported by the entire commission. That's the most practical way and the best way for me to get it done by kind of Monday. So if you all agree with that, that's how I can proceed forward.
Okay.
That sounds good. And if any of you would like to shoot an email to Mike on your thoughts and your concerns, that would be helpful. I mean, I think we remember what people said, but would be helpful in focusing if you have any particular things you want to convey to the council, and then I hope we can circulate it and give everybody a chance to review it before it goes to the council.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of time, and so I think your guys' motion was clear enough to capture your concerns. And so, Lang, I'll get with you on Monday. I'll start it as soon as possible, but if we can plan to touch base on Monday just to kind of finalize it and get it out, that would be great.
Okay, and I have a few thoughts. I'll shoot you in an email tomorrow morning. So.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, I think we're finished with our agenda business. Any other comments or thoughts from anyone on any harbor subject? And hearing none, maybe a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded.
All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Thank you all for your time tonight, commissioners, staff. whoever out there is in the public is listening, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Stay safe.